Last year, we announced our next star system would be Nyx, home to the People's Alliance of Levski and bordering the Vandal threat. Today, we're proud to share that your adventures in Nyx begin not next year, but next month, when Star Citizen's third system comes online in Alpha 4.4.
This isn't my normal type of video. I don't normally do this sort of video because there are a lot of others who do, and they're much better at it than I am. I seriously thought about doing this sort of video after last year's CitizenCon, but never found the time to go through the 2 days worth of content to recap. This year, the event was just 2 hours long, so it was much easier to rewatch and glean details. By now, you've probably seen a dozen or more videos from content creators like myself about what was contained in the presentation. Not to mention the fact that you probably watched it yourself, maybe even more than once. So I'll do my best to not waste your time. My intent is to go over what was shown, and more importantly what was said, and hopefully give you some ideas on what to expect from the next 12 months of Star Citizen. The first thing up is Nyx. I think anyone who watched last year's CitizenCon fully expected Nyx in the PU either for the Christmas release or the first release of 2026. Even so, to hear Chris state unequivocally that Nyx will be released in November with patch 4.4 sent a thrill through me. As a miner and a crafter, Nyx is the system I plan to call home. I did find it odd that Rich Tyrer thought it was important to stress that the Nyx system would be built right in front of our eyes. I mean, if you've been around since the 3.0 days, that's exactly how they built Stanton. Yeah, they tried to bring Pyro in as a full system, which, as the way to introduce server meshing, probably was the right way, but I suspect that watching new systems grow in content and points of interest will be the standard for new systems going forward. It allows them to get the system in game as soon as possible, and still take the time required to flesh it out to their and our standards. I suspect that they felt they had to stress the fact that Nyx would be built out as we watch, in order to keep people from complaining that this or that is missing from the star system at launch. Who else remembers when Crusader and its moons were only JPEGs in the background of the various stations? So I'm a little confused about something. Will Weisbaum told us the history of Nyx and stated that the planets were too hard to terraform. But later we see Nyx 1 completely transformed from what the lore states it should be. I have some ideas about how that might be, but I'll wait until later to share them. Brian Canary talked about Nyx being a proper frontier system. He used westerns as references to paint a picture of what to expect. I honestly won't be surprised to find a ship that looks an awful lot like the Serenity crashed on Nyx 1 or 2 at some point in the future. Off-grid was another way that the Nyx system was described. So I won't expect outlaw gangs like in Pyro, but I won't be surprised if outlaws and their gangs show up in town, so to speak. Jake Dunlop described a really dense gas cloud that forms the Nyx system. If you thought Majumi Refuel Station was hard to see, imagine the entire star system being like that. It will make hunting for mineable asteroids a lot more interesting. The Glacium Ring is the home of Delamar. The way they are describing it, and from what they showed, I would expect low visibility, like steering your ship through thick smoke or fog. It will be a really good place for mining undisturbed because no one will be able to see that you're there. Delamar, as we saw last year, is properly placed on an asteroid, not a planetoid. Technology is improved, so we will benefit from it by getting a proper asteroid base. What they didn't talk about last year is the cloud that now surrounds the area. Astrogation here will be tricky. I expect a lot of crashes as people get used to the idea that you will need to use your instruments here. As much as I hate not being able to see my destinations from 20 or 30 kilometers off, I really like this idea that Nyx is a mysterious system shrouded from casual view. I also like the fact that outside of grav plates, the entire site is 0G. We will be able to EVA completely through the borehole, if we choose to. I, for one, plan to do exactly that. They have hinted at hidden areas that we will need to find. I expect that the borehole will have at least one of these. It could be as simple as the Christmas room under New Babbage, or it could be a way to sneak goods into Levski without anyone knowing. Honestly, I think personally exploring every inch of the asteroid will be worth it. Learning and memorizing where everything is useful knowledge to have. They also showed us the new planets in Nyx. Originally, and according to the star map still, Nyx 1 is a coreless wasteland that was mined dry. Nyx 2 is a corrosive smog planet, and Nyx 3 is an ice giant. While Nyx 2 and 3 apparently retain their original descriptions, Nyx 1, however, has changed drastically. The technical reasons for changing Nyx 1 are simple. They want to test the new Genesis planet building system on a new planet that won't cause problems for players. If something doesn't work, it just delays the introduction instead of taking out a planet that's already in the game. It also gives them a blank canvas where they can put all the various biomes that they've been working on onto a single planet. It's a really smart idea. There's just one problem. Nyx 1 is far too close to the star to support anything other than blasted rock, at least according to the current lore. No matter what, they're going to have to change the lore. Nyx 1 is going to have to be moved further out so that it is in the Goldilocks zone. But that now puts Nyx 2, which was at the inner edge of the habitable zone, farther out. I suppose any planet that is closer than the outside edge of the green zone could end up being a smog planet. You need enough of the star's heat to reach the surface that it can be trapped. Too far out, and that just can't happen. I would have swapped Nyx 1 and Nyx 2 so that the innermost planet on the inside of the habitable zone was the smog planet, and then placed the new Nyx 2 midway through or on the outside edge of the green zone. That would have completely changed a few things, but it would work. That's not what they said they're doing. At least, the planet they talked about being the hero planet, they kept calling Nyx 1 in the presentation. I see only two options then. Either Nyx 1 is farther out from the star than they originally put it, and it developed these biomes on its own, or, probably the more likely lore explanation, that company with the new terraforming tech that we saw in the 4.3 loading screen used Nyx 1 as a test bed to make sure their tech worked. Nyx 1 will still need to be moved further from the star, into the habitable zone. A little of the history will need to be rewritten, because for it to support life, it will need to have a molten core that produces a magnetic field to protect the planet from the solar radiation. Who knows? Maybe this new terraforming tech will take care of that somehow. Nyx 2 will also need to be moved further out from the star. The systems and lore were developed back when they were expecting that landing on planets was going to be a process that was on rails. You would only have one, maybe two places you could land on any planet, and there was absolutely no way they could populate every planet in every system to a standard that would work. Now that they have the tech that allows all of this to happen, I personally have no problem with them making these changes to make every system worth visiting and exploring. I have no doubt that they have already rewritten the lore to fit this new layout of Nyx, and we will hear about it as Nyx 1 comes online, as a place we can visit, explore, and at some point, build a base on. What this now means is that a lot of the planets in the verse that now show barren in the star map will have much more interesting biomes on them. Because Genesis is a procedural system, it will place biomes based on the data created by where the planet is in the system, its size, rotation, and orbital period. Entire planets can be created without an artist ever touching it. The only place artists have to come in are the various points of interest. Those can be added later as time allows, if at all. I will be really curious to see what Genesis can come up with on its own, without human intervention. That's not to say that no one will have to do any work to create these planets. People will still need to come up with the physical datasets for each planet. Things like height maps, humidity, temperatures, soil type and amount, and erosion data. These datasets can be created much faster than the time it takes a set of artists to manually place everything. I can see a time when these datasets are also procedurally generated, based on a description of what the planet should look like. Computers are really good at analyzing and sorting data. I'm not talking about AI, though that would be a good use of it. But once you know what data needs to be where, you can write a program to do that for you. I have an entire website that automatically rolls random tables for your D&D game at the click of a button, because I know what the possible data is. It takes time to write the program, but once it's written, everything you need to prep an entire game session can be done in moments. That's the sort of technology CIG has always been good at creating. So I won't be surprised when entire planets are generated without a person touching them, except for any POIs. What Genesis allows for is much more potential places that citizens will be able to claim and build on by orders of magnitude. Star Citizen was always going to have a massive amount of land that players could call their own, but now the possibilities are literally endless. Those players who were concerned that all the quote-unquote good places would be taken within the first few days of release no longer have to worry about that. There will be far more usable land than millions of players could grab. Of course, with player-built space stations, land is no longer an issue at all. As soon as base building comes out, I plan to start building somewhere on Nyx 1. Now we come to the system-to-system hauling missions. I am really excited about this. Moving cargo from one system to another is something I have been wanting to do since Pyro came in. The problem was, there were no missions for that. The so-called interstellar hauling missions were simply to take cargo from some random station to one of the jump gate stations, but not through the jump gate. If you wanted to do that, you would have to buy the cargo, load it, take it through the jump point, and sell it somewhere in the other system. It has been doable, at least when the servers are cooperating, but it's been risky. One of the things they specifically said was that these missions may spawn NPC encounters with pirates. If it works, this is something we've never had to deal with, and it adds excitement and complexity to the game. This will mean crewing up your multi-crew ships, and maybe even paying for escorts. My plan is to avoid direct routes. If NPC ships are going to spawn on the direct shipping lanes, I will avoid them. Delivery might take a few extra minutes, but it's worth it to avoid the encounter. Then again, NPC ships may spawn along any route I take. I suspect this means that the external cargo elevators will be in and ready at the various stations for loading the whole sea specifically. Since they are a feature of Levski, I would expect them there, if nowhere else, to begin with. This will mean using the tractor beams to load and unload cargo from the whole sea, something we haven't had to do so far. One benefit of this will be that there will be an entrance to the station right there that will take you inside if you need to go to the admin office. No more docking and undocking several times to unload and reload your ship. They also told us about a new mission specifically in the Nyx system that they are calling Rock Cracker. This actually looks like an interesting mission, especially once proper crafting comes into the game. The idea is that you'll be taken to the Keeger Belt. That's the larger, outermost of the two asteroid belts in Nyx, out beyond the orbit of Nyx 3, where you will discover an abandoned mining facility that was used to break open large asteroids. This is one of those missions where CIG is trying to create gameplay for more than a single player type. This one appears to be geared towards exploration, of a type, engineering, FPS, and also mining professions. Once there, you will need to find a way in, that's exploration. Inside, you'll need to clear the facility of any hostiles, FPS. Once you have control of the facility, you will need to figure out how to get it operational. That's engineering. Finally, once it's operational, it will crack open the asteroid and allow you to take mining ships inside to mine the resources. They also mentioned that once operational, the facility would become a beacon for anyone else who might want to take what you have. So it might be worthwhile to have some fighters along with a capital ship that can rearm and refuel them in order to maintain control of the facility. That's fleet operations. I'm not much of an FPS player, but the rest of it sounds interesting, especially since they outright said that the reward would be a huge amount of materials. Once crafting comes online, this could be the way to get everything you need to craft whatever you want in quantities that will allow you to spend some quality time crafting before you have the need to go back out and mine more. Speaking of crafting, they finally showed us a little more about what to expect with the first implementation. Tier 0? Sometime next year. They said the next few months, so I'm hopeful that it'll be before next summer. They told us that they will be giving us a few blueprints to start off with, though more blueprints will require taking missions and looting them. My hope is that once obtained, if they aren't used, they could be given or sold to players. Like I said, I'm not an FPS player, but I do intend to become the ultimate crafter. Allowing for blueprints to be transferred, at least up to a certain point, would allow those of us who prefer not to take the risks to obtain them from players who do. If I can buy blueprints for items I want to craft, I see no reason why it would need to be a one-time transaction. I would kind of expect that if I'm providing something that another player can get rich from, I should be compensated for each sale, not just a single transaction. But that's the businessman in me. They also specifically stated that crafting is the game's primary progression mechanic. That is something they haven't said before, and it's huge. So the first things we will be able to craft will be weapons and armor. That's great, because those are both items that players want and need. While they said that we will be able to craft better items than you can buy, I doubt that will be part of the first implementation. If it is, even better. What they didn't mention is if there will be a way to sell those items to other players. Crafting is one of those skills that not everyone is going to want to do, and no one needs 20 sets of the same armor. So a way to buy and sell crafted items will need to be in the game. The sooner, the better. They talked a bit about material quality, stating that the quality of material will be based on location. I understand why they've done this. It allows for crafting, which apparently works internally, to be added to the game. My hope is that once refining comes into the game, quality will be based more on the refining process, where the more time-consuming and intricate the refining process, the higher the quality of the output material. Currently, with the automated refining, the amount of time you allow for refining determines the amount of material you get out of the process. By adding quality into the equation, it would allow players to become very good at creating the highest quality materials for crafting, which, of course, would command the highest possible prices to buy. This would allow for miners to mine, not needing to concentrate on quality as much, and the refining gameplay would then become the major factor in determining the quality of the finished material that gets input into the crafting process. Based on the changes to salvage that are coming in with 4.3.2, I think this is what they have in mind. There is also the fact that the bigger mining ships like the Arastra and Orion won't be able to pick and choose to mine only the high quality asteroids, so I suspect that refining will play a major role in quality of material eventually. They also said that the next several patches would be mining oriented, so I'm hopeful that maybe the Galaxy, along with its refining module, will come out early next year. Once crafting comes to the tech preview, I plan to start doing it immediately, if I can. I also see crafting and salvage as the first steps towards ship repair. Since I have 2 crucibles, I'm really looking forward to repair. No one has mentioned it, but I see what is being done, and from what they themselves said, crafting was the blocker keeping repair from being released. Something else that caught my eye. I don't remember where I heard it, maybe it was Danny Raymond from Ray's Guide, but he hypothesized the idea that eventually we would be able to mix and match ship parts to build completely unique ships. With the Gray's Market Shiv, I see that becoming a reality. What this would mean is that as a crafter, if you had the blueprints and the materials to make it, you could craft a ship with the parts of any other ship. That would allow you to make ships with only the best parts for each job needed. Imagine a large freighter with Xi'an-inspired directional thrusters, like on the Santak Yai, and Tavaran shields. It would be highly maneuverable, fuel efficient, and nearly untouchable. The last thing they showed us was tactical strike groups. As I've said repeatedly, I am not an FPS player. Not because I don't like it, but because I'm no good at it. But I own both a Polaris and an Idris K that I would love to fully crew and captain. I already have a few ideas about the tactics I want to try. I am perfectly fine sitting out of range of the station's main weapons, playing a support role. this mission is going to take more than one of each capital ship to refuel and rearm. What I would do is order my Idris to stay out away from the station. This might mean that the fighters need to come out a little further to refuel and rearm, but it also puts my ship in a better position when the Vandul arrive. The large ships need to be spread out enough that they aren't a single large target. The ability to attack the Vandul ship from multiple angles will be key to destroying it. I think that watching all the turrets on my Idris light up as enemy ships come within range will be spectacular. From the bridge of the Idris, I would have a fantastic view of every part of the battle. If they use instancing, there could be more than one Vandul hunter or mauler. The last segment gave us a lot of information for those who were listening. Rich Tyrer seemed to indicate that the monthly or near monthly patches will continue. For the most part, I think that's a good thing. I would really like to be able to mine and keep the refined ores between patches. When crafting comes in, I suspect that will happen. I've heard that some people are disappointed that CIG didn't mention a specific feature, so they must not be working on that. But they specifically mentioned at the end that features are being worked on. Things like engineering, FPS scanning, quantum travel, and inventory were specifically mentioned as features that are actively being worked on, but didn't have a segment this year. I've been guilty of it in this video, talking about my hopes for refining and the ability to buy and sell with other players. None of that was mentioned this year, but I know that CIG knows how to make a game playable, so they also know what is needed in order to make the game playable. Therefore, I'm not worried about if they are actively working on it or not. I know that on some level they must be, in order to bring out all the things that they did talk about. Anyway, that was this year's CitizenCon. I look forward to seeing the things that they talked about and those they didn't come into the game in the coming months. If you like this video, click the button. If this isn't the first video of mine that you've watched, subscribe. It's free and it helps me grow. Until next time, see ya!